Hello everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name is Sean Waskrug and I'm here to basically review all the upcoming movies that are out in theaters as well as any other movies you guys recommend, whether they be in theaters right now or have previously come out or anything that's old school. So if you guys have any reviews you request or anything you want to see me do on the show, feel free to leave a comment below, or you can leave a comment on Sean's Movie Crusades on Facebook. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that way you guys are up to date with all the latest videos that are coming out down the road. Now today, just to do something a little bit different besides just your typical movie reviews, I decided to do the first ever Sean's Movie Crusades Top 10. And basically what I'm doing, since it is that time of year, we are doing Christmas movies. And we are doing the top 10 Christmas movies, based personally on my opinion. Like I said, everyone's opinion is different. Some people love certain movies more than others. Some people classify certain movies as Christmas movies that aren't Christmas movies, which, don't worry, before we get into the whole Die Hard as a Christmas movie, I do have a separate category for that to appease everybody. But basically, this top 10 is my personal top 10. This isn't more or less a review of this movie was good compared to this movie was bad or anything like that. This is more or less, in terms of the Christmas time, these are my top 10 go-to movies when it comes to Christmas. Everyone's got their favorite. I'm not going to name any right now because they could be on the list. But overall, these are the movies that I love to watch when it comes to Christmas time. And it's not necessarily this is the best Christmas movie ever done because of A, B, and C. It's more or less why I like them and why other people like them too. So to top it all off, most top 10s will usually do like an honorable mention, and it's usually the couple, two to five movies that should have made the list but just didn't quite make it. I'm not necessarily doing that. Now, what I'm doing is what a lot of people have the big argument about when it comes to Christmas movies, which is, does a Christmas movie have to be about Christmas? And in terms of that, we mean by like the certain movies that are like action movies or horror movies that are based around Christmas time, that have a Christmas kind of is in the backdrop, but it is not the focal point of the movie. And so because of that, and I didn't want to upset a lot of people who, like I said, Die Hard, for example, is one that gets used a lot, is saying it's the greatest Christmas movie ever made. It's not a Christmas movie. Yes, Christmas is there. It is based around Christmas, and there's an aspect of Christmas in the movie, but it is not a movie based on Christmas. So what I basically have done is, instead of doing an honorable mention, I'm going to basically be doing a top 4 movies with Christmas themes. So what these basically are the top 4 movies that are have Christmas in the backdrop of the film, but are not generally about Christmas. And they are movies that are not necessarily different, but they're not Christmas-type films, but they are regulated and are considered Christmas movies to a lot of the public. And so the first one on the list is going to go with the first one of a 4-part film franchise, which is none other than Lethal Weapon. Basically, Lethal Weapon came out in the 1980s. You have Mel Gibson in the height of his powers of being a fantastic action actor. You have Danny Glover, who basically plays a great straight man who managed to kick ass. You have Busey. Busey's a great villain in the movie, and it happens around Christmas time in Los Angeles. One of the iconic parts of the movie is the finale where Gibson and Busey battle it out on Danny Glover's lawn with all the Christmas ornaments and all the water going over everywhere, and it's a great scene. Fantastic action comedy, really set a standard and establishment for the buddy cop comedy, where you have Mel Gibson as Riggs and Danny Glover as Murtaugh. Riggs playing the crazy out of control cop who's just looking for a way to die since he just wants to be with his wife. And then you have Danny Glover, who's the old veteran who, as he quotes it many times in the movie, he's just too old for this shit. And they get kind of forced together to work a particular case, and in turn they eventually become partners legitimately after that. But it's a great movie based around Christmas that a lot of people enjoy, and it is definitely number 4 on the list. Number 3 on the list is a favorite of mine, and as you can see right over here in the background is a favorite character of mine, and that is Gremlins. It is the first movie is actually more horror based than the actual sequel. It's about a kid who, well, he's a teenager. He gets a weird gift in terms of Gizmo, which is sitting behind me, right behind Groot over there. He's a Mogwai, and basically he's a special kind of creature, incredibly peaceful, lovable, cute. I mean, he's adorable. But he's got certain restrictions to him, where there's 3 things you cannot do with a Mogwai. 1, it can't be in sunlight or really, really high levels of light. You can't get it wet, and you can't feed it after midnight. And if you do, it basically reproduces in a way and kind of shoots off these little fur balls, and these fur balls turn into gremlins, which are basically taller, meaner, more reptilian versions of Gizmo. And of course, it is a horror movie, so naturally Gizmo gets wet or it gets fed, and he spouts off tons of these creatures, and they wreak havoc on this small town during Christmas. It's a great horror comedy based around Christmas time. It's considerably better than the sequel. The sequel, they went full blown with the comedy, almost to the point where it was a parody. But the original is really where it lies, and it's a great old school horror based around Christmas time. I know a lot of people like Black Christmas and Krampus, stuff like that, but Gremlins has that beautiful layer of comedy with horror and cutesiness with Gizmo that really ranks up there for me, in my opinion, as one of the top Christmas movies that are not Christmas movies but have Christmas themes. Number 2 on the list is one that tends to get forgotten a lot, and not in terms of how great the movie is, but in terms of it being actually about Christmas, and that is Batman Returns. Easily my favorite Batman outside of the Nolan trilogy. It's done incredibly well by Tim Burton. Michael Keaton returns as Batman. He's easily one of the best debatable Batmans ever to grace the screen. Instead of just one villain like he had the Joker in the previous film, he's got 2 villains this time. Technically 3 if you want to count the kind of sub-villain of Christopher Walken's character. But you also have Danny DeVito as Penguin, who gives a menacing, psychotic, but also, layers of not heart, but emotional range in terms of the Penguin. And then you got Michelle Pfeiffer in a phenomenal role as Catwoman. Easily her transformation from Selena Kyle to Catwoman is one of the better ones that has ever been done on picture or in movies. Her transition from her being thrown out of the window by Christopher Walken to her coming back to her apartment and just thrashing it and finally finding herself as Catwoman is an amazing scene. But it's like I said, it's based around Christmas. There's Christmas going on. They have a big Christmas ball where they're all in gowns and wearing masks, and that's another great scene in the movie where Bruce and Selena finally figure out who they really are. And Selena gives that great line, "Do we start fighting?" It's a beautiful line, and it's a phenomenal film. It's a great Batman movie. Danny DeVito is at his best. Danny DeVito in this movie, he does a fantastic job as Penguin, and frankly, I haven't seen anyone do a good Penguin since. So it's definitely one of the better Christmas-themed movies. But based off everybody else here, it is not number 1. Number 1 is always going to be Die Hard. Die Hard is always going to be ranked as probably the best Christmas movie that is not about Christmas. Literally, the only thing Christmassy about it is that the whole premise of the film is that it's done during a Christmas party, and that's when Alan Rickman's character Hans Gruber comes in and kind of takes control, and Bruce Willis is there because he's trying to, he's there for his wife, and they're trying to make their marriage work, and so this is kind of one little stepping stone is going to her office Christmas party, and then that's where all hell breaks loose. Die Hard is an all-time classic. If anyone who says differently is, I'm sorry, wrong. And yes, a lot of people say it is the best Christmas movie ever made. And while I could get into an argument about that, I'm just not going to. It is a phenomenal movie that happens during Christmas time, but it is not a Christmas movie. It just has Christmas themes, but that doesn't take away from it that it's a phenomenal film and that it launched a whole franchise of movies and made Bruce Willis a phenomenal action star. Not to mention Alan Rickman as easily one of the best villains ever to grace the screen. And that's kind of what we have here. That's your top 4 or honorable mentions of this list of top 4 movies that are based on Christmas themes. So like I say, you have Lethal Weapon at number 4, Gremlins at number 3, Batman Returns at number 2, and Die Hard at number 1. And now we will go to the actual top 10 Christmas movies list. Like I said, my personal opinion. It does not mean that number 10 is worse than number 1. It's just my personal view of it. Like I said, everyone's opinions are different. You might like the list. You might hate the list. Everyone has the right to their own opinion. But let's go ahead and go to the top 10 Christmas movies on Sean's Movie Crusades. And we will start with number 10. Let's put it this way. Before I get into it, 9 and 10, they're old school favorites. They should have been seen by everybody that's around today, but because of how old they are probably not as beloved today as they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. They're good movies. They're great movies. I don't particularly enjoy them nearly as much as I did back in the day, to the point I'm kind of sick of them now. But you can't have a Christmas list without these 2 movies. First one being It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life it was always on TV. It still is, for the most part. Not as much as number 9 is now. A beautiful black and white picture. Basically, it's about a man who is about to commit suicide on Christmas Eve when an angel shows up and shows him basically how wonderful his life is. The tagline of the movie. Basically, kind of almost like a Scrooge-esque situation where he is invited by a ghost, but this time it's an angel, and he's showing him what the world would have been like if he was never born. It obviously affects his family, it affects the woman he was married to, it affects his friends and the town he lives in, and basically shows that his life was very important, not just for him, but for everybody around him. And basically, by the end of the movie, makes him understand that he does have a wonderful life, and with kids and a loving wife, and that while times are tough right now, that life's worth living. And it's a very important message. It's a great message. I don't know if we would ever get a remake of it. I think a remake wouldn't really serve it justice, but it belongs on this list. It belongs on every Christmas list, whether it's 1, 2, 5, 7, 10. This time it's 10, mainly just because these other movies I just enjoy watching. Wonderful Life's a great film. It's just kind of dark in a certain sense, especially with Christmas movies. I mean, some people like that. I usually like my Christmas movies to be a little more happy, funny, go lucky. And you're going to see that on this list. A lot of them are going to be more towards that path, less the dark kind of tones. But yeah, It's a Wonderful Life. It's a great film. Everyone, if you haven't seen it, go see it. Or not go. I mean, you can find it on TV or Netflix or anything like that. But it's definitely a worth watch. Number 9 also is one that is shown everywhere. In fact, one channel, I believe TNT, shows it for 24 hours straight, and that is A Christmas Story. This movie has been beaten into my brain for many, many years. It's got a ton of amazing quotes that people use. It's got props that people still remember, like the leg lamp, BB guns. I mean, the whole threat that parents give us about BB guns literally comes from this movie. The iconic, licking a cold steel pole outside and getting your tongue stuck. It's from this movie. It's basically about it's kind of almost episodic in a sense. It's just like little stories here and there about this kid named Ralphie. And just kind of his escapades with his family going through Christmas. And it's a cult classic. As you can see, I mean, one channel literally dedicates 24 hours of its telecast to show this movie on repeat. It's just that for me, it's just over the years, it's become almost to the point where it's annoying. But it also, like I said, like A Wonderful Life, it needs to be on the list. Some people's it's their favorite Christmas movie ever. Others, it's their worst, mainly just because of repetition. Mine, it's number 9, and it's still a classic. It's still enjoyable to watch, but it's not something I want to watch every year because it's been beaten into my brain so much by the marathons done on TNT. Number 8, we are going to go with Nightmare Before Christmas. Once again, favorites for everybody out there. Another Tim Burton classic. Basically about a Halloween town, and basically the main guy of Halloween Town, Jack Skellington, who's now become an icon, discovers Christmas for his first time, and he just becomes embodied by it, and he tries to make the town itself more Christmassy. It's got great music done by Danny Elfman. What Is This? And This Is Halloween are two iconic songs that are still iconic to this day. And it's also, that stop motion claymation it's done, but it's not done as much. But this is, when you ever see a stop motion film or a claymation type film, this is the one that they're always trying to be like. It's Tim Burton at his most Tim Burton. He's got great dark undertones throughout the entire movie. It's sweet, it's creepy, it's funny, it's joyful. It kind of hits all the marks on what makes a good movie. And it's once again another all-time classic in terms of Christmas or just a movie in general. And you can kind of catch it anywhere on TV around this time of year, even during Halloween, because it technically is a Halloween movie turned into a Christmas movie. So it kind of covers the bases of two holidays at once, which most movies don't do very well, but this one does it beautifully. Number 7, Jingle All the Way. Now, this movie is not necessarily a good movie. It's very average, but I love it. It's the first movie that I ever really saw as a kid that really kind of showed Black Friday to me, even though it does not take place on Black Friday, but it kind of gives you that craziness of the shopping and stuff like that. Most movies, they don't dive that much into how crazy it is for that year toy, that number one toy that every kid's gotta have. And this movie does it. It stars Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad and the kid from Star Wars. His name's Jake. I'm blanking on his last name. This was pre-Star Wars Episode 1, back when this kid had a career, until Star Wars killed it. But basically, it's funny, it's stupid, but it's enjoyable. Turbo Man is the toy, and the whole movie itself is all about Arnold Schwarzenegger trying to get this Turbo Man doll for his son because he basically was too busy and just forgot to get it. And it's like, days before Christmas, and he's having to fight with another father, Sinbad, who's trying to do the same thing, and their escapades that they go through to try to get this toy are great. And it all leads up to an awesome climax when it's at a Christmas parade and Arnold basically has to dress up as Turbo Man and Sinbad dresses up as the villain, and it's awesome. I love it. And it's an enjoyable movie for me and for a lot of people, even though it might not be something that everybody likes. It's a movie that I personally enjoy, and it deserves to be on this list. And I hope a lot of people, if you haven't seen Jingle All the Way, I go out and watch it. It's fun. And it's a movie where Arnold is not super Arnold or anything like that, at least not until the end of the movie when he has to be Turbo Man. But it's enjoyable to watch Arnold Schwarzenegger do something that's not action heavy, and him just trying to go full on comedy with it. Sinbad, he's not a great actor, but he's great in this. And it's just an enjoyable film, especially around the Christmas time. Number 6. Christmas Vacation. Once again, this is a movie that deserves to be on everyone's list. National Lampoon has made a franchise out of the Vacation series with Chevy Chase, and Christmas Vacation is easily the best one, in my opinion. Randy Quaid is hilarious in this movie. Chevy Chase is obviously hilarious. The movie is just so dang funny. Whether it's Chevy, Clark Griswold is his character in this. Whether it's him trying to have the brightest Christmas house in the neighborhood, and then him, messing with it, and the power not working, and him freaking out, and then it finally comes on, and it knocks the I think it's Juliet Louis-Dreyfus is the neighbor, and just destroys their bedroom. That's awesome. I love that scene. There's so many great parts of this movie. So many hilarious parts. Especially his Clark's freak out when he gets his Christmas bonus, or the fight with the tree. The family coming in, all the weird characters you get. Just like any normal Christmas dinner with a bunch of family members. Christmas Vacation, it's crude. It doesn't apologize for it. It's a rated R comedy, and it's an all-time classic, and it's just hilarious. And anyone who hasn't seen Christmas Vacation is really missing out on a great comedy. But let's face it, most of you, if not all of you, have seen this movie, and it's probably on your list. So let's go ahead to number 5, and that is the original Home Alone. Home Alone was a favorite movie of mine when I was a kid. I mean, who didn't want to be Macaulay Culkin back at that time? To be a kid, to be left home alone, to have free reign of your house, and then to have to defend it against 2 burglars played by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. They're a great combination of comedy. They work well together. Their physical comedy, when they go through all the booby traps in the house, is comedy gold, and has me rolling to this day, no matter how many times I've seen that movie. Macaulay Culkin is great in this. He plays, and one thing is I love is that, like, and you can kind of tell when you get older, like with the Grinch, when you were a kid, the Grinch was just like, well, I don't understand why he's so mean. But then when you grow up, you're like, okay, I kind of understand the Grinch now, and I kind of follow him. Whereas, like, when you were a kid with Home Alone, it's like, oh man, Kevin doesn't do anything wrong. Like, Kevin's just, they ate his cheese pizza. It's just, how awful. And then, like, you grow up and you become an adult, and you're like, man, Kevin is such a little jerk. Kind of like when he gets called by his uncle. And you kind of understand that Kevin is a horrible kid, or at least an obnoxious brat. But once he's left alone, he kind of has to fend for himself. You see his character kind of change, at least until the sequel. But it's incredibly well done. It's an enjoyable fun movie. It's funny. It's got a great Christmas message, and it's got a great supporting cast as well. And also a great scene stealer by John Candy. At the time, he plays the polka guy who gets the mom home. But it's an enjoyable film. Home Alone is easily on my list of something I have to watch every single year, as well as the sequel, which is probably going to be on this list. Not going to lie, it's on there. It just hasn't popped up yet. But Home Alone, it's an all-time Christmas classic for me and most people, and it's something that is sure to always be on my yearly review or yearly Christmas watch list. Number 4, The Santa Claus. I'm a huge Tim Allen fan. Not necessarily his previous stuff. I'm not a big fan of his current show, Last Man Standing. But I loved Home Improvement. He is always a guy to me. And this movie, and of course Buzz Lightyear. I mean, he's Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story. So naturally, Tim Allen's always a favorite of mine. But this was his first movie. It's not his first movie, but it's his first dive into Christmas. And I love this movie. It's called The Santa Claus, not Santa Claus, because they treat being Santa Claus as like a contract and not a person. As we see in this, Tim Allen plays Scott Calvin. He's kind of an absentee dad. He's a dad who's just he gets his son for Christmas, and in the process, he's not real good at being a dad. I mean, he can't cook, so he takes his son to Denny's. And then, on the night of Christmas Eve, his son hears Santa Claus on the roof. And so naturally, as a dad, he goes outside because he doesn't believe in Santa Claus. And he sees Santa Claus on the roof, and he yells at him, and it causes Santa to fall off the roof and die. And because of that, he puts on the uniform, and by doing that, it now locks him in as the new Santa. And basically, he has to be Santa Claus until he dies. And it's funny in a sense. I mean, it's messed up because basically, being a Santa Claus until you die is kind of like a punishment in a sense. But then you learn to love it like he does in the film. But I love how he's a normal looking guy, but then because he has now become Santa, It transforms him. Like, he just keeps progressively getting fatter, no matter what he tries to do. He starts growing a beard. Even though he shaves it, it grows right back instantly. He tries to dye his hair, but his hair turns gray. It's just, because he's locked into this contract, he is now being forced to look like Santa, no matter, how he looked previously. And then, of course, the elves are great in the movie. And it's also kind of a coming-of-age tale for most people. And that was always kind of one of the big issues with kids, or Christmas movies in general, is when Santa is actually introduced as a real person, what does that do to the adults? And naturally, stuff happens, they grow older, and they just kind of forget. And it's kind of like one of those things where they're having to learn to appreciate and find that love for Christmas again, and not just be a holiday about giving presents to kids, but ultimately the joy and wonder of Christmas in general. And you get Christmas along the way. But Tim Allen is great. They spawned this off into 2 more sequels. They're not nearly as good as the first one, but the Santa Claus with Tim Allen is easily a highlight and something I recommend to many people. Number 2 goes to, number 3 goes to Elf. A lot of people either love this movie or hate this movie. I personally love it. It's Will Ferrell at his finest. It's right before his career explodes. I mean, he went from Saturday Night Live, he did Night of the Roxbury, and then he did a bunch of cameos, and this was right before his Anchorman explosion. Will Ferrell basically plays Buddy the Elf, and if I have to explain this movie to you, then why? You guys should have seen this movie. It's hilarious. But like I said, a lot of people either don't like the movie or love the movie. I personally love it. It's got amazing one-liners in the film. It's funny from beginning to end. It's weird. It's off the chain in terms of like just all of a sudden claymation, like old school claymation characters from the Christmas TV shows show up in the movie. Frankly, I mean, Will Ferrell's character Buddy, he shouldn't be alive with the way he lives his life. Eating just sweets all day. He should have been diabetic a long time ago. He already should have been like 600 pounds, but he's Will Ferrell. But it's got a great cameo by Peter Dinklage, who many people love from Game of Thrones. He's hilarious in the small role he's got. James Caan's in it. He plays the dad. He plays that hard-ass father who didn't know he had a son, and because he thinks Buddy is special, he wants nothing to do with him. But it's a great story, and just like with Santa Claus, it teaches you to appreciate not necessarily the presents, but the amazing wonder of Christmas, and just the all of it all with Santa. And one of the great parts of the movie is when Santa's sleigh's not working and he's being chased down by what looks like a police force of dogs dedicated to capturing Santa Claus, which is a little weird. But like I said, this movie's weird. It doesn't it doesn't apologize for it. It's doing its own thing, and I love it for it. But it has to get everyone to start believing, and it has to get everyone to kind of sing loud for all to hear, and to make the power of Christmas prevail, so that way Santa's sleigh can ride and he can kind of deliver the presents for the night. And then, sadly, it didn't spawn off any sequels. I kind of figured how the movie ends that we would have gotten a sequel to the Elf series, but we never got another one. But it also doesn't need one. This movie stands up on its own, and it's a classic. And for people who love Will Ferrell, it's easily one of their favorites. And to people who don't like Will Ferrell, yeah, you're probably not going to be a big fan of this movie. But Elf definitely deserves to be on everyone's top Christmas movies list. I get that it's something that some people just don't like, but to me, it's easily one of my favorites. Number 2, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Now, a lot of people are like, well, I like the first one better. The reason why I like Home Alone 2 better than the first Home Alone is I kind of just like the co-stars better. I mean, you have Kevin, he's back, this is kind of the one time where, what he ended up doing wrong to get in trouble in the beginning of the movie was justified. I probably would have pushed his brother too if he did what he did during the choir performance. I mean, he's still a brat, but Kevin's older, he's wiser in a sense, and to me just makes off a better character. And obviously Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern are back as the bandits, and they're just as good as they were in the first film. But the reason why I love this one more than the first film is that it's not just Kevin and Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci. I mean, the first film had the neighbor, and obviously it had the parents' storyline, but no one really cared about that. They just cared about Kevin and the bandits and the house antics. Whereas with this one, you have Tim Curry, who's fantastic in this role, as small as it is. You have Rob Schneider. You have, I'm blanking on the actor's name, but the guy who runs the toy store. I'm blanking on the actress' name, but you have the homeless lady, with the pigeon lady. There's just great characters built into this movie, as well as the main storyline going on between Kevin and I'm blanking on one's Marv. Oh, Harry and Marv. I'm blanking, but their stories are the continuation from the sequel. Obviously the antics are upped this time out because they got to top the first one. Naturally, in real life there's no way they would have survived the antics that Kevin puts them through. They would have died a long time ago. But it's a comedy, it's slapstick, it's enjoyable, it's Christmas time, and it's in New York, which is just a bigger landscape for the whole thing, and it's just more Christmassier than the first one in a sense. And I really enjoyed it, and it's easily, I like it better than the first one. I like them both, I love them both, but because of those added elements that this one gives, I love this one more. And let's face it, everyone, when this movie came out that was a kid, they all wanted that Walkman. I had that Walkman. It didn't work nearly as good as it does in the movie, but that movie made me want the toy that had that in that film, and I don't have it anymore, but I definitely had it at the time. I just didn't use it as well as Kevin did. The number one Christmas movie, basically, for me personally, and for a lot of people, Love Actually. This is a movie that creeped up on me. I was not expecting it to be that good. I remember working at the movie theater and saw this movie coming out, and I was like, oh god, it's just a rom-com. This is going to be so annoying, and it's not going to be that great. Because it's just a bunch of individual stories put together around Christmas time, and it just didn't seem like it was going to be that good. And then I kept having to, go in there and check on the patrons. And then I just kept watching it, and every night I would try to get there a little bit sooner so I could catch more of it. And I grew up loving this movie. It's easily my favorite rom-com ever made, or chick flick ever done. The cast is amazing. It's all British actors. Liam Neeson, Hugh Grant, Keira Knightley, Andrew Lincoln from Walking Dead before he was Walking Dead. The cast, Bill Knightley, the cast is endless. Colin Firth. It's fantastic. It's got heart, it's got comedy, it's got romantic, it's romantic all the way through. It's incredibly well done. If it doesn't get you emotional, at least in one or two scenes, then I don't know what you need to do to get emotional. But this movie hits everything. There's so many iconic scenes that have been done / redone. You have Andrew Lincoln and Keira Knightley's holding the signs at the door while carolers are singing. That came from this movie. The kid running through the airport to try to see his crush before she goes to America. The rushing into the restaurant to tell the waitress that you love her. There's so many great scenes. It's a highlight film that I have to see every year, even though it did spawn off horrible American remakes such as like Valentine's Day, New Year's Eve. They just never quite captured the magic of the story or the acting to even come close to how amazing Love Actually is. And because of that, Love Actually is my number one Christmas movie of all time for me. And it's easily something that needs to be watched every year, in my opinion. And for people who haven't seen it, because there are a lot of people who haven't seen this movie, because either A, it doesn't get talked about enough, or B, it's just a movie that kind of flies under the radar because it's all British actors, and it's not an action film either, but for a lot of people, it's a highlight like it is to me, and it's 100% recommended. If I couldn't recommend a movie more, it's Love Actually. and that's why it is number 1 on my list. So as you can see the list behind me, that is my top 10 Christmas movies list. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed some of the movies that are listed here. And like I said, no one's perfect. You either hate some of the movies on this list, you love the list. Like I said, everyone's got their opinion. Feel free to leave your comments below. Feel free to leave your comments on Sean's Movie Crusades on Facebook. And like I said, like, share, subscribe, spread the word. Let's get more subscribers. Let's get more people. If there are movies you want requested to be reviewed, leave them in the comments. Hit me up. I want to talk to you. I want to kind of make this community bigger. And if there's something you want me to review, tell me. I'll go watch it. I'll review it. I'll make a video. And maybe if you want me to, I'll shout your name out on the video because you're the one who brought it to me. Either way, I hope you guys like the list. I'm going to be doing more lists coming up. There's going to be top 10 movies of the year list that I'm going to be doing here shortly. Probably do a top 5 most disappointed movies list. And then there'll be most anticipated movies of 2019. There's a lot of great things coming out in 2019. I might have to do a couple different little videos about that. But I hope you liked my first ever top 10 list. And if all else fails, in case I don't see you guys, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders, and have a happy holidays.